If you spend any time around sports science, you hear it constantly, right? Specialization means trade-offs. You can't be amazing at everything. It's that classic physiological interference effect.
Yeah, the idea that if you train heavily for strength or muscle growth, you're going to blunt your gains in, say, maximal oxygen uptake, your tech speed.
Exactly. Sprinting versus endurance. They kind of fight each other physiologically.
That's the standard thinking, yes.
Yeah.
But then you look at soccer, football.
Right.
It just seems to break that rule. I mean, these players cover huge distances, maybe 10, 12 kilometers a match, often working at like 70% of their tech speed most. That takes serious endurance.
Yeah, they're not just jogging around. It's constant explosive stuff, too.
Yeah.
Tackles, jumps, quick turns, and, yeah, those really high-speed sprints.
Absolutely. Elite anaerobic power living right alongside that massive aerobic engine. So it's a bit of a physiological puzzle.
How does that even work?
Yeah.
And maybe more importantly for people listening, how do you coach players who need both?
Well, that's exactly what today's deep dive is getting into. We're looking at a really interesting study that used some pretty advanced data science.
Okay.
Trying to cut through that complexity, to see if they could identify specific measurable types of players based on this mix of abilities. The idea is to get beyond just general training programs.
Toward something more individualized.
Precisely. So the paper we're digging into today is titled Classifying Soccer Players Based on Physical Capacities and Match-Specific Running Performance Using Machine Learning.
Okay.
It's by Michel de Haan, Stephan van der Zwaard, Jurrit Sanders, Peter J. Beek, and Richard T. Jaspers. And it was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, Volume 24, pages 764 to 778 in 2025.
Great. So let's get into their methods. Who were they looking at?
Right. So the subjects were 31 young elite male players. These were U18 and U21 guys from a professional club.
Okay. High level.
Definitely. And they gathered data over 2 full seasons. That's huge. 619 matches worth of performance data.
Wow. And what about the physical capacity side? How do they measure that?
They focused on 2 main things. First, sprint capacity. Pretty straightforward, an all-out 20-meter linear sprint test. Gives you that raw speed measure.
Like their maximum sprint speed, right?
Exactly. Their MSS and also average speed over that 20 meters.
And the second capacity?
Endurance.
Yep, endurance capacity. Measured using a maximal incremental treadmill test, the standard way to get to XVO max.
Oh.
But here's a key detail. They didn't just use the raw XVO max number, they normalized it.
Normalized it how?
They normalized it to lean body mass raised to the power of 2/3. So TXELBM2 only.
Huh. Why that specific calculation? Sounds complicated.
It does, but it's important. It's about removing the influence of just body size. If you just divide by total weight, a bigger player, even if fit, might look worse just because they weigh more,
Right. Could penalize muscle mass. Exactly. Using lean body mass to the 2/3 power is a way to level the playing field, to compare their actual physiological engine efficiency, regardless of their frame size. It gets closer to pure fitness.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've got the lab tests, sprint speed, normalized endurance capacity. How did they measure what players actually did in those 619 matches?
They used tracking systems, multiple ones actually, over the 2 seasons, and they broke down the running into key intensity zones.
Like different speeds?
Yeah. They looked at moderate intensity running, MIR, that's sort of the 14 to 19 kilometers per hour range. Think jogging, shuffling, repositioning.
Right.
Then high intensity running, HIR, that's 19 up to 24 kilometers per hour, more demanding bursts.
Right.
And finally, just sprinting anything over 24 kilometers per hour.
Got it. So lab sprint capacity, lab endurance capacity, how much they sprinted in games, and how much moderate and high intensity running they did in games. Those 4 things.
Those are the 4 key variables, yes. And they fed all that data into an unsupervised machine learning algorithm.
Unsupervised, meaning they didn't tell it what to look for.
Exactly. They use something called k-means clustering. The algorithm just looks at the data points for all the players across those 4 variables and sees if they naturally clump together into distinct groups. No preconceived notions about positions or anything.
Letting the data speak for itself.
Pretty much. And the really cool part, it worked.
It found groups.
Yeah, it found 3 distinct non-overlapping subgroups, and these weren't just random clusters, they were robust, meaning they showed up consistently even when they ran the analysis many times.
Okay, so what were these archetypes?
All right, cluster 1 was the smallest group, just 4 players. They called them SPR for sprint-oriented.
The speedsters.
Totally. They had significantly higher 20-meter sprint speeds in the lab tests. And crucially, they actually used that speed in games, covering way more distance sprinting, like an average of 359 meters per match at sprint speed.
Wow. Okay, cluster 1, SPR. What's cluster 2?
Cluster 2 was labeled ND for endurance-oriented. A bit bigger, 6 players.
The engines.
You got it. These guys had significantly higher normalized text VO max. And again, it wasn't just potential. They actually covered significantly more ground in those moderate and high-intensity running zones during matches. They put that engine to work.
Makes sense. And the last one, cluster 3.
Cluster 3 was the biggest group, 14 players. They called this one AVG, for average.
Average, meaning?
Meaning, these were the players who didn't really stand out at the extremes. They didn't have the super high sprint capacity or the super high endurance capacity, and their match running didn't spike significantly in either the sprint or the endurance categories either.
So like the solid all-rounders, maybe?
Yeah, you could call them generalists, good players, but not defined by one extreme physical characteristic in the way the SPR END guys were.
Okay, so we've got the sprinters, the endurance guys, and the average players. That's interesting in itself. But you mentioned earlier this challenges the old ideas about trade-offs.
Ah, yes. This is maybe the most surprising finding. Remember the interference effect? Sprint versus endurance.
Yeah, they're supposed to conflict. A negative relationship.
Well, in this group of young elite soccer players, they found no significant relationship at all between their 20-meter sprint speed and their normalized text VO. Not positive, not negative, basically zero connection. The R-squared was tiny, like 0.086.
No way. So the interference effect just wasn't there for them.
It really wasn't apparent in this data. It strongly suggests that, at least in these players, developing high sprint capacity doesn't necessarily hinder your endurance capacity, and vice versa.
That's huge. It kind of blows up a lot of traditional training thought, doesn't it? But why? Why would soccer be different from, say, cycling or rowing, where that trade-off is really clear?
That's a great question. The authors suggest it might be about reaching physiological extremes. Elite rowers or cyclists, for example, often have way higher normalized text VO values. Think like over 300 text MLK, GUL, BM text.
And these soccer players were averaging?
Around 257. Still very high, elite even, but maybe not pushed to that absolute ceiling where the body is truly forced to compromise one system for the other.
Ah, so because soccer demands both high-level sprint and high-level endurance, the training keeps them incredibly fit in both areas, but maybe prevents them from specializing to the absolute max in one.
That seems to be the idea. They become elite generalists, physiologically speaking, rather than hyper-specialized athletes in one domain. They need to be great at two things, which maybe stops them from being absolutely world record-breaking in just one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so the capacities don't conflict. But did having a high capacity actually translate to doing more of that activity in a game? Like, did the fastest sprinters actually sprint more?
Yes, but moderately.
Moderately.
Yeah, they found a positive correlation, definitely. Higher sprint capacity was linked to more sprint distance in matches, and higher endurance capacity was linked to more moderate and high-intensity running.
But only moderate. What does that mean in numbers?
Well, the R-squared values were around 0.168 for sprint and 0.151 for endurance. So that physical capacity explained maybe 15 to 17% of the variation in how much they actually ran at those intensities during a match.
Only 15, 17%. That seems low.
It is surprisingly low, isn't it?
Yeah. It means like 83, 85% of why a player sprints a lot or covers a lot of ground is down to, well, something else.
Exactly. Tactics, their position on the field, maybe technical skill, decision-making, and efficiency.
Efficiency, like running economy.
Precisely. Think of it like engine power versus fuel economy. Text VO max is like your engine's max horsepower. But running economy is about how efficiently you use that power, how much oxygen you need to run at a certain speed.
Okay.
And when the researchers looked at a different endurance metric, maximal aerobic speed, or MAS, which does incorporate running economy, the picture changed quite a bit.
How so?
The relationship between MAS and the actual endurance running done in matches was much stronger. The R-squared jumped up to 0.409.
Wow, over 40%. So being efficient makes a huge difference in how much you can actually run during a game.
A massive difference, it seems, especially for a sport like soccer, where you're running continuously but at varying speeds for 90 minutes. Efficiency really matters for sustaining that output.
Okay, this brings us nicely to the practical side. How can coaches actually use this clustering approach?
Yeah.
Especially with that big AVG group.
Right. The AVG cluster is really interesting from a coaching perspective because you can find two important types of players within it.
Okay.
First, you might have a player who tests relatively low on physical capacity. Maybe their sprint isn't top tier or their text VO max isn't outstanding. But when you look at their match data, they're running a lot. High output.
So they're basically outperforming their physical numbers.
Kind of, yeah. And that flags them as potentially being at higher risk for overuse injuries or fatigue.
Ah, like they're constantly pushing beyond their baseline.
Exactly. So a coach using this system could identify that player and say, okay, we need to focus on building their physical capacity, maybe targeted strength or endurance work, to make them more robust and handle that workload safely.
That makes a lot of sense. What's the other type within the AVG group?
It's kind of the opposite situation. You have a player who tests really well physically. Maybe they have great sprint speed or a fantastic text VG mac no, but they're in the AVG cluster because their actual running output in matches is, well, average. They aren't using those physical gifts.
So high potential, low application.
Precisely. And that signals a different kind of opportunity. Maybe it's not about physical training for them. Maybe it's about tactics or their role on the team.
Like putting them in a position where they have to use that speed or endurance.
Could be. The study even noted this, like players in the AVG cluster who played as central defenders consistently ran less at moderate and high intensities.
Because their role doesn't demand it as much. More about positioning.
Exactly. Field constraints, tactical demands, they shape how physical capacity gets expressed. A central defender might have a great engine, but their job keeps them in a more confined space, focusing on different skills. This system helps differentiate between capacity and application.
So it's a powerful tool for individualizing training then. Identifying risks, optimizing roles.
That seems to be the main value, yes. Moving beyond just position labels and looking at the individual's physical profile versus their actual performance.
Okay, so summing up this deep dive, what are the big takeaways for coaches, players, anyone listening?
Well, I think there are a few key things. First, this machine learning approach really can identify meaningful, distinct player types based on physical tests and match performance. It's not just one size fits all.
Right, the SPR, A&D, and AVG clusters.
Second, that big surprise. In these young elite soccer players, the classic sprint versus endurance conflict, that interference effect, it just doesn't seem to be a major factor. They can be good at both.
Which is important for how we think about training them.
Absolutely. And third, while physical capacity is clearly important, you need the engine, you need the speed harring. It only moderately predicts how much a player actually runs in a game.
Yeah, that 15-17% figure was striking.
It really was, and it highlights just how crucial other factors are, especially running economy or efficiency, but also tactics, skill, decision-making.
So it leaves us with a bit of a question, doesn't it? The authors kind of posed this at the end.
They did. It's sort of. Given that capacity isn't the whole story, where should the coaching focus be? Is it about pushing players harder to actually use the physical gifts they have? Or is it more about developing that tactical smarts, that technical skill that allows players to be effective even if their raw physical numbers aren't off the charts?
Or maybe finding that sweet spot where physical ability meets game intelligence.
That seems like the ultimate goal, doesn't it? The data shows capacity is necessary, but it takes more than just being fast or having a big engine to be a truly top player. You need to apply it effectively.
Definitely a provocative thought to leave hanging there. Lots to think about for anyone involved in player development.
For sure. And if you really want to get into the weeds, see the specific data, the charts showing the clusters, and especially that analysis on maximal aerobic speed.
Then you should definitely check out the full paper.
Absolutely. Again, it's classifying soccer players based on physical capacities and match-specific running performance using machine learning in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
Excellent. Well, thank you for walking us through that fascinating study. It really challenges some old assumptions.
My pleasure. It's always interesting when data throws us a curveball.
Indeed. All right, that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Remember to follow the channel and turn on those notifications so you catch our next breakdown.